Hi, kids. Okay, on this day in film history for August 13th, start with some movies. 1957 is the release of Man of a Thousand Faces. Of course, Man of a Thousand Faces is the nickname of Lon Chaney. So, this is a Lon Chaney biopic. James Cagney, I've talked about a lot on this channel in the film noir series. White Heat. James Cagney portrays Lon Chaney, Man of a Thousand Faces, had his makeup kit, pioneering makeup artist transformations um, on the Mount Rushmore of makeup artists. Um, so Lon Chaney died in 1930. So this comes out 27 years after that. He was 47 when he died. He died of lung cancer. This film was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, but you should know if you watch it, they took some liberties with Lon Chaney's story. What a surprise! A Hollywood biopic took some liberties with the story. 1967, 10 years later, is the release of Bonnie and Clyde. Arthur Penn directed. We got Warren Beatty as Clyde Barrow and Faye Dunaway. I just talked about her the other day as Bonnie Parker. This film is part of the New Hollywood movement. You don't get things that you get in the 70s cinema without Bonnie and Clyde paving the way. Um, when it was released, it was a surprise sleeper hit. It became Warner Brothers' second highest grossing film ever at that point in 1967. The highest grossing for Warner Brothers at that point was My Fair Lady. Two very different films. Um, it had a $2.5 million budget. It made $70 million at the box office. It was nominated, I think, for 9 Academy Awards and won 2. So how's that bang for your buck? Excuse me. 1992 is the release of Dead Alive or Brain Dead, whichever one you want to call it. It is the Peter Jackson horror film. It is Peter Jackson's, I think, third feature film. He is the writer and the director on this one. It'll be another 9 years until everybody knows Peter Jackson's name, or people who aren't just in the horror or New Zealand community know Peter Jackson's name. He also did the stop motion for this film. I don't want to talk about it too much because if you haven't seen Dead Alive or Brain Dead, it's kind of hard to find. Uh, Maybe you should. 1982, the release of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, directed by Amy Heckerling, uh, based on a story. I think it's a story expose uh, written by Cameron Crowe, screenplay written by Cameron Crowe. I think this is his first foray into screenwriting, and then he becomes writer director. Cameron Crowe. He went undercover in a high school and wrote about it, and then this became the movie based on what he observed. Another film based on his observations is Almost Famous. Yes, Cameron Crowe, big Led Zeppelin fan, got to go on tour with them, got an inside look writing for Rolling Stone magazine, and then later in his career would turn that into the film Almost Famous, Stillwater. So this film has Sean Penn and Jennifer Jason Leigh and the Honorable Judge Reinhold and Phoebe Cates. Someone posted that this was released today, and they just showed Phoebe Cates screen caps because that's what the movie's about. And the debut film, I believe, of Forrest Whitaker. Okay, 2010. Last film I'm going to talk about, personal favorite, is the release of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He doesn't really fight the world, though. That's a misnomer. He fights the evil X's. Based on the Brian Lee O'Malley graphic novel series, or would you call it graphic novels? I guess they're not that very graphic. Brian Lee O'Malley, Canadian. This film takes place in the Canada. directed by Edgar Wright. This was a box office bomb. There's a lot of buzz, I remember. So, prior to this movie coming out, I remember reading online that it had premiered. There were screenings. I saw Kevin Smith, director of Clerks, and so on, saying that Michael Cera's performance in this film reminded him of Bugs Bunny. It was a Bugs Bunny like performance. I was like, man, I gotta see that. Hadn't read Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and of Edgar Wright though, Shaun of the Dead. So wanted to see it. Went, saw it, opening weekend, if not opening night, in a theater full of what could best be described as hipsters. It's a universal, 8-bit opening thing, and everybody cheered. One of the most enjoyable film experiences, most memorable film experience watchings in a theater of my life. That's why it's fun to watch movies in the theater. And maybe that's why I'm such a big fan of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Box office bomb, but was on a lot of best of the year lists, has a cult following, has grown. Scott Pilgrim, I think Edgar Wright's best. That's my opinion, though. Okay, let's talk about a person in 1899 on August 13th. Of course, he's born on the 13th, is Alfred Hitchcock. The man, the silhouette, needs no introduction. Died in 1980. He was 80 years old, so he just missed his 81st birthday, I guess. Died of renal failure. Slowed down his output quite a lot during the end of his career. I've talked about him a lot on this channel. I've done videos for Psycho and North by Northwest and Vertigo and Rear Window and Rebecca and The Lady Vanishes. And those are just some of the titles in his career. I think the British Hitchcock is on Criterion right now. So there's British Hitchcock, and then he came over, and then there's the age of all those films I just talked about, a run of films he did. But there's other ones. There's the Frenzy later in his career where he's showing a different side of what Hitchcock could do. Notorious, and The Birds, and The Wrong Man, To Catch a Thief, Strangers on a Train, Shadow of a Doubt, Foreign Correspondent, 39 Steps very early in his career, Lodger. Um, are you a fan of Hitchcock? And if so, what's your favorite Alfred Hitchcock film? Do you have a favorite? That's it for me for today. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe.